Okay, so we've just called to order and we had public comment from our treasurer who is just asking about when her term begins and ends, and we'll have to look into that. Okay.
We want to re-ask if it's public
Yeah,
comment.
I will, yep. And is there any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, we have an action item to approve the agenda. I'll take a motion for that.
So move, Steve.
And a second?
Second.
Ooh, you go, you're.
There's a battle for second. Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we're down to the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Kathy, and a second?
Sarah, second.
All those in, any discussion? Oh, no, not discussion for consent agenda. Sorry about that. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So we have under executive limitations, action item to approve monitoring report 2.4, financial planning and budgeting. And you should have seen the link in the agenda. Can I have a motion, please, for that action item?
So moved, Kristen.
And a second.
I'll second, Sarah.
Okay. Any discussion or questions about 2.4? And we do still have Patrick here, so if you, you may be able to chime in with questions or comments. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.4, financial planning and budgeting, please say aye.
Did you want to ask me questions?
Yes, I did want to ask my questions first.
You need the binder.
I need my binder. Thank you. Okay, based on the information provided, does the board find that the superintendent's interpretation is reasonable? If you agree. Does the board find that the data demonstrates accomplishment of this interpretation? Okay, given that, all those in favor of approving monitoring report 2.4, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, next we have an update in financial report. Does anyone have any questions on that? Okay. Hearing none, we have also the superintendent report. Questions or comments about that? All right, we'll keep moving. Under board management and governance, we have two monitoring reports. The first is 3.3 delegation of the superintendent. May I have a motion for that moving report?
Moved, Aaron.
And may I have a second?
I'll second, Kristen.
Okay, any discussion? Barb is not here to share how her experience doing this went the first time. For the first time, but she did it with me, Brad, so thank you for both of you for doing that. Okay, so hearing none, based on the information provided, does the board find that the interpretation is reasonable? And does the data demonstrate accomplishment of this interpretation? Okay. All those in favor of approving monitoring report 3.3 delegation of the superintendent, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, next we have monitoring report 4.2 board job description. And I need a motion to approve that. Keely? And a second?
I'll second, Sarah.
And this was Kristen. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any questions or comments about this monitoring report? Okay, hearing none. Based on the information provided, does the board find that the interpretation is reasonable? Okay, and does the board find that the data demonstrates accomplishment of this interpretation? All those in favor of approving monitoring report 4.2, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving right along. Our next action item is to direct the superintendent to use education reserve funds to engage in a multi-year contract with a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. May I have a motion for that action, please?
So moved, Steve.
Second, Kathy.
Any discussion? Kevin?
So do we, I know we've talked about this, and I believe this is to look at curriculum and that sort of thing. Do we have any, is there any understanding of what we are looking for, to get out of this, what the deliverable is?
So I think that at our last meeting, we talked a bit about the feedback we'd heard from the community and our response to that, which included a lot of wonderings about the current state of our district with
Okay.
respect both to anti-racist curriculum, but also overall, how are we doing as far as being an inclusive and anti-racist organization? And so because of that, then we talked about the need to do some sort of assessment of our current state, and then from that, receive recommendations of what it might look like to improve areas that we wanted to improve on, or rise up those areas where we're doing really well. And so this motion broadens that initial request about anti-racist curriculum to more of an overarching look at the district overall in terms of how we're doing in those areas of inclusion.
So I guess, you know, I understand that, you know, somebody will come in and tell us what they have for a vision, but we will work based on what the conversation was last month as far as what we're seeking then.
My
Say that
understanding,
again.
sorry, but
Okay.
my understanding is that it is within the board's purview to allow the superintendent to access the funds. And then it will be the superintendent's role to take it further.
Okay. So,
So I can
So-
share that so far, all we've done, not knowing if we were gonna be able to access the funds for sure, is start looking at available consultants and get recommendations.
so what we've discussed and heard as concerns probably will be taken under advisement by the superintendent, but not necessarily.
That's my understanding.
And just to clarify, this is from one of the funds that is called the
Education Reserve Fund.
Education Reserve Fund.
Yes.
Just clear.
Yeah, so we need to. If this is something that we as a board think is worth exploring. Where are we currently, where we might want to grow and improve. We are saying we are directing the superintendent to be able to access those funds to pursue that work. And it's the superintendent's work to do. And that would be, the board would be informed about it or updated on it, but it's really his work, given that we've made that recommendation, that it would be really good to know more about where we are, to decide with a consultant, how that would unfold.
And my sensitivity is, we've heard all these things, and I'm just trying to figure out how that gets acted upon, if you will.
This is a start.
Yeah. And I guess the other question I have is, I don't see an upset figure here as to how much
Right.
he can use out of the ed fund to do this work.
Mhm.
So can he use it all or none of it, or something in between? Yes.
I can chime in on that a little bit. I think, what we've seen for consultant fees is, to do any kind of meaningful amount of work, it's probably in the neighborhood of 100,000 a year. And in terms of the multi-year, I'm thinking probably in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 years. I think, again, the type of work we're talking about, you don't get very far in just 1 year. So I'm thinking at least 3. And then we would sort of see what additional work and support we would need from that point forward.
I would add that, one of our strategic plan goals was around equity, and a lot of the things that I think with a consultant's help, we could make progress on or identify where we currently are already articulated in that plan. And this is sort of the mechanism by which to make that be realized. And I think that the community interest sort of lit a fire under something that had already been of interest to the district, but there's many of those priorities. So this was an opportunity to start to move the needle on that goal.
And one of the first things we would look to do with this consultant, as we're currently redrafting the strategic plan, is to have them kind of help us think through equity language in that plan and how it can best be represented. So that way this person can be sort of in on the ground floor here as we build this new strategic plan that will then drive a lot of our focus.
Sorry, I can't see you over there. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
So I think to Kevin's point, this is a little bit broad in terms of an action. I think it might make sense to sort of monitor the progress of the contract creation. Where, maybe the board gets a chance to see which consultants were looked at, which were chosen, which one was chosen, what the contract amount is for, and what that scope of work initially wants to be, and then maybe get a chance to approve that. This is pretty open-ended. And I think I think in order to authorize the funds, we actually have to provide a dollar figure. So it might be that what we want to do tonight is encourage this to happen. But then maybe actually authorize it through a more narrowed down scope and plan with a dollar amount attached to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think, hopefully I don't come off negative or anything, but we had a at-length discussion as a board. We've got community input that I'm not sure necessarily dovetailed totally. It's just a subsection of what we talked about. And I don't want to lose track of what's been discussed, if you will, and it probably won't. I mean, I have a lot of faith in our administration, but a spec writer, all those kind of guys, are kind of like looking at. So I think your approach is good, Steve, is for an action, and maybe we modify this, is have the superintendent investigate and develop a scope with an upset cost or something like that.
Yeah, I would say, encourage the superintendent to bring, a contract proposal, for a particular consultant to the board for approval.
I'm not sure I wanna hear every detail once we.
No, we
talk on this
obviously
thing,
need
but I
to,
wanna make
we
sure
need to let
all the
this,
bases are covered, if you will.
yeah, we need to let this take place once it's approved, but I think even just to be firm about the amount we're going to draw from the fund, we need to have something a little more concrete. Or at least I'd like to have something more concrete.
Patrick, is there a way to look at different levels of consultation? $100,000 to me is 1.5 teaching positions. And is there a way to look at a tiered level of consultation?
Sure, I think there are a lot of options here. Yeah, 100,000 is about one teaching position with benefits and everything included. And given other consultants we've used over the last 2 or 3 years, that's what we've seen as kind of the going rate. That's why I'm using that as a ballpark figure. But I do think, talking with various consultants about what they offer, what our needs are, expressing the interest in a multi-year agreement, I think we can bring something back from the board after doing to the board after doing some deeper digging. As Katrina mentioned, there are conversations underway now. It's in the early stages, but I think we can bring back the information that Steve mentioned.
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, I agree with Steve's formulation. It's not a de minimis amount of money. And I think it's incumbent to, it's our responsibility to have some level of oversight, obviously not making the decision, but have some oversight over the process.
Yeah, not guiding the work.
Yeah,
but
right,
at least
exactly.
guiding the authorization of the work.
So what do folks want to do with this motion? What's the will of the group? Amend it, table it?
I'm sorry, but do we have a motion on the floor?
Yep.
Yeah.
We
Talk
do.
about
I
it.
would make a motion to amend this to say that direct the superintendent to investigate using education reserve funds.
Would we be better served to just table it until the time that he comes back with?
I think that's what effectively table it without sort of having to go back around and
Yeah.
or voting this down. It might look weird.
Mhm.
And for what it's worth, encouragement noted.
So
Any other
really
comments?
just change the wording to investigate using. That's the motion.
Wait a minute,
That's the amendment.
I thought you were just saying table it.
Table it.
No. I'm
Just
saying,
rewording.
Oh, sorry.
I think the amendment is
Easier.
easier
Gotcha. Okay,
and
so now here's where my lack of Robert's rules skills really is gonna
Got it.
show.
so vote on the amendment.
Yes, okay, so we're going to
Vote on
vote on the
to
amendment in the negative if
revise-
you're in favor of the,
Well, the amendment. has to
I'm
be
sorry.
seconded.
Yeah.
You have to
vote,
second
vote
it.
on
Yeah,
an
there has to be a
amendment
second.
first.
Has to be a second for the amendment first.
All seconds.
I need the amendment.
Yes, so the
Yep.
amendment,
Clarify, please.
yes, the amendment is to change the wording of the current motion from direct superintendent to use education reserve funds to direct superintendent to investigate using education reserve funds.
Okay, we had a,
And I'll second that.
okay. So Mike seconded that amendment. So now we're going to vote on that amended motion.
Probably discuss the
Discussion
Yeah,
Thank you.
if there is.
first.
Just so in a second, because I think it makes perfect sense. I don't, not even for this particular action in this particular use, but I think just sort of good board policy in general. I did share these same sort of concerns about how open-ended this was. And I think this allows us to be very precise in what we're actually going to do.
Can I just interject? It sounds to me that this is investigate the use of the money. I think how the money is used is already determined. That's board action to use the money. So the wording on this might be not investigate how to use the money, but investigate what to do with the money that you're authorizing them to use, authorizing him to use.
No, I think that's more confusing.
I'm,
That feels more means to me.
Well, I think if you look at the whole statement in context, not just the investigate to use,
yeah.
look at the rest of it.
The rest of
It's very clear
the
with
statement
that
actually
context.
continues. I don't know, Vicky, if that's clear, but the rest of the motion remains as it's worded currently.
So I
Yep.
have to amend the wording of the current motion to direct superintendent to investigate using the educational reserve funds to engage in a multi-year contract with a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant.
Right.
Steve, when you were initially talking about it, you had something about bringing the contract proposal back to the board. Does this motion need to say anything about that, or is that just sort of
I
a
think that's.
inherent?
Without
Okay.
further complicating the motion, I think that's inferred.
Okay.
But we know
And
no
if-
reason for them to investigate it if it wasn't gonna come back to us.
If I can offer an interpretation from what I'm hearing, I think what I'm hearing is we agree in principle to use these funds for this purpose, but we want to know more precisely what's the dollar amount and what are we getting for that?
Yes.
Affirmative.
So are folks comfortable with the amended language and with that verbal understanding?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're gonna vote on that amended language. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Now, do we vote on the other guy? Yes. Yes. Okay,
No, we vote yes, don't we?
And we voted on the amendment.
right, so do
So
we have
now
to
we
do
actually
everything
have
with
to
the
vote
second?
on
Yeah.
the original motion as amended.
The motion
Okay.
as amended.
Motion as amended.
Okay, so we are now going to vote on the motion as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Wonderful. Godspeed, my friends.
You can put this on your resume.
Yes, I know. Not- Okay, negotiations update.
That's me. We're still in the thick of negotiations. We're meeting this Thursday. To continue that. I don't really have any solid figures to present to you. We have a bunch of tentative agreements on all the other articles that were brought up between the two parties, but nothing finalized as of yet.
And just to be clear, this is staff.
This is support staff.
Support staff.
Yeah.
Gary, can we have a timeline in which we have to come to the conclusion?
No, we can go as long as we want it to, but we're hopeful that we're done by mid to late March. Everything wrapped up.
Thank you for your good work on that committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very important and very challenging. Okay, facilities committee. There's an updated link.
So there is minutes in there. Our last meeting kind of focused on, the meaning of life. And
Amazing. How did I miss that
it's
one?
like a
we came up
beanstalk,
with
isn't it?
What's even better is we got
It's
answers.
40.
Oh, wow.
So,
The answer is 42.
yeah. So anyway, we talked about maybe it fits that, there's no facilities committee per se, that facilities considerations maybe get folded in with the finance committee, and then the finance committee or the facilities committee people would get dispersed based on where the need is. So we are leaving with that as to a recommendation when we renew charges for the next period. I committed a cardinal sin.
We're just going for it, aren't we?
So there's been banter on at least a Bristol front page forum about what a waste of money buying the Munsell Avenue building is for central office. So I gave a personal opinion that unleashed the firestorm on us, firestorm, but there was a lot of commentary both public and privately about that. And I haven't followed on with anything with that, but I'm thinking that I should probably follow on at least. And I'm walking a fine line here between because at some point it becomes apparent that I'm dispersing board information, but in my opinion, board information, but anyway, my intent is to link out Floyd's little summary and put that out before the community, probably sooner than later. And I think I touched on it a little bit. There is a tremendous amount of voices, now whether it's a minority or majority, this remains to be seen, that moving the central office should be a little inexpensive operation. I mean, people just don't understand the complexity of the cost of this. I think sharing Floyd's little FAQ might convince people that it's more complicated than just pushing a few tables around in a couple classrooms and having the central office move in. I don't know in the other three towns if there's discussion or how we disseminate information to the other three towns.
I think the blurb that was common would be great.
The blurb that was coming,
A common
common word.
message that had the link would be good.
So I guess it's sort of a segue to your committee in a way, because I think you have all those materials already prepared, right, for the video and the links and that's everything that's on the website.
Yeah, Jennifer did a great job, and maybe Floyd
Yeah.
as well.
I checked.
Today, yeah, there's a total repository of a lot of really valuable resources.
Yeah.
Surrounding the budget and then also touching on the central office purchase. So that might be another place where we could get this posted and linked to.
Yeah.
To that end, today, to all four towns, a little blurb went out that said, here's the link to the MASD website with more information. We are supposed to make a 10-minute presentation and it's 17. And so there's that.
We won't tell.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not the best, like my audio is not ideal, so we have some room to improve as we go forward, or I have some room to improve as we go forward. But I think the content is all there, and the idea was to try to give something similar to what we did tonight, with maybe a little bit more detail on both the budget and the central office purchase. So just providing more direct context, maybe just in another format than the mailer. So that's out and available and in all the towns. And so that's what we've been sort of working towards.
When you say out in all the towns, that means that's
Front
an
porch.
FPF blast to all four towns.
Yeah, exactly. So Jennifer posted it, I think, under Patrick's name.
Yep.
Yeah.
Today.
Perfect. Yeah.
So that came out, and so I just wrote a little bit of text and it had two links, one to sort of just the MAS, and you got the idea, repository, and then one with a direct link to the video presentation,
Yep.
kind of outlining budget and central office rationale.
So a couple things, it wouldn't hurt to have that sent out again.
Yeah.
You know, maybe 2 more times even, I don't know. And then also, I don't know what you think, Patrick, about sending that via Blackboard as well to all MAUSD families. That's something we've sometimes done.
Yep,
when
we can do
there's
that.
been- Yeah. And I don't know.
There's a pop-up on the homepage right now.
Yep.
That directs you straight to that repository.
And
So-
then I don't know if Jennifer also posted it on social media, but she's able to do that as well.
It was
But
on
I
the,
just,
it was on Facebook as well, I think. But we do have, the only hiccup with this is, as a district, we have a limit in the number of posts we can put out per month. So that's the only thing in terms of putting it out more times. I don't know that we've used many, so it might be fine, but I'll just have to check with Jennifer.
But I think to
But we
that
could-
point, you know,
that's
it's great if board members can do that also.
Mhm.
And also, I mean, it's packaged so well that, you know, you can send it in email to folks that you know that are concerned or have questions. You did all the heavy lifting, so we just need to help share the information. I think that's an important part of our job, is to make sure folks have access to the information, so. Yeah. If you could do that, that would be great.
Just as an aside, it's sort of outside, at some point it might be useful, and maybe it's just me, but to try to understand like. Kind of procedures to go from work that we do as subcommittees and how that sort of interacts with the admin and the board as a whole.
Yep.
In the sense that like, I didn't really know how to effectively do that.
Yep.
So I like have a video last week and it's like,
Now we're like,
what do we do?
Yep.
And sort of uncertainty about like, does that make sense? Like, nobody else reviewed that.
Mhm.
Like, does it just get posted or, so I don't,
We have a board communications protocol or
Okay.
process that is. It exists.
perfect.
However, you know, we haven't revisited it recently, but I think it's a really important point. And something for this group to think about moving forward. And it talks about who might be like the point people, who might be the people who should review things before they go out. So that you know,
Perfect, yeah.
who did, and what are the places where things should get posted. So,
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll look into that as well. I just, yeah, had some uncertainty, but
Yeah.
it's probably a me problem.
And one of the things. that-
no, it's that you didn't know it existed, because we don't talk, you know, this is an area where it's always hard to stay on top of the information that we want to get out. And we don't have a set person whose job that is.
Yes.
I mean, it might be interesting to see if that could be something the clerk could help with moving forward, or some other designee, but, yeah, so.
Perfect.
Yeah, and the Policy and Governance Committee is looking at a central repository for protocols. Because we have quite a few of them, and people are always asking, where are these things? So,
So I think what I'm hearing is you've got the official statement and we just need to tell
Mhm.
people. in that direction.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if it's, I mean, it should have gone to front porch forum for everybody, but if it's useful, I can just send that same text
yes,
to the board, the
Yep.
email.
Yes.
And then to whatever extent over the next week, you want to post that in
Yes,
anticipation of a vote, that would just make sure that anybody has the option to engage with it. If they turn their volume up.
yeah.
That's not ideal,
I
yeah,
don't hear you so well.
Yeah, it's sort of,
What about the other towns? I mean, the only call I've gotten is from somebody from Bristol. So, but I haven't heard anything in Starksboro.
I haven't either.
I don't know about them or. Yeah, okay. You have.
I haven't heard anything.
I think that's all of our updates, though.
Okay, great.
Other than we look forward to not working on the budget, I think.
That's a really good call.
Figuring out what else the
Period.
finance committee.
That's
is
a
doing,
really good
supposed to
call.
do. So,
I would just say that. it's-
Segue.
Yeah.
You know, I know how much time you all have put into it, but it felt really nice to be able to have a board member or board members speak, and also Kevin, you know, to be able to speak robustly about this work, I think is important. So
I agree.
I think these committees are working out well. Even if they sometimes are not needed. There might be a time when you're gonna get
You
redeployed.
know what? I'm not
Someone will
gonna
get
lose-
redeployed.
In another week, I'm not gonna lose any sleep.
No, you're not. Neither will I.
I'm coming across the street to talk.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so kind of under the banner of finances, we have an action item to approve the FY 23 audit report. And I think there was maybe a discussion to be had there, a brief discussion to be had there, but first I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
And then a
Sarah.
Sarah and Kathy. Okay. Mike, did you want to?
Yeah, I can give a sort of a broad overview. So we received this really lengthy audit of the budget, 2023 budget. And it kind of came in a couple of different forms, a very long form, and then letters directed toward sort of superintendent and letters directed towards admin, I think, if I have that right.
Board and management.
Board management, perfect, yeah, exactly. And the short of it was, things look really good. There was no major issues that were noted throughout the audit. The only sort of small issues, which I think the biggest one was related to sort of student discretionary spending, is that the
Student activities
student
fund.
activities fund? Yeah. there you
We've been
go.
working diligently for a couple of years to bring that into compliance with GASB 84. And in the beginning of 23, we weren't as good as we were at the end of 23. And it's a picture of how we did over the whole year. So it did speak to the deficiencies early in the year as something that we needed to work on, and we have.
And so we had kind of a nice discussion with the subcommittee and with Floyd to just sort of dot i's and cross t's and felt pretty comfortable that the report reflected that finances were in order. But we didn't feel comfortable moving forward without bringing that to the board and opening up possibility for questions or concerns related to that. So that's what brought us to this point.
And then did you have a question about?
Yeah, I
that?
had a
Go
couple
ahead.
of questions. I've glanced through it and I always have maybe they're the same questions, I don't know. The first one was on page 10. It says the general fund actual expenditures were expended over budget by $722,000. And I'm just curious, that would statement all by itself would normally throw off alarm bells, but I'm sure there's some rational explanation for why that's not a fire action.
So the pieces that made that happen, one, we were over budget on the lobby project, which the authorization to take money out of capital reserves went towards that. Additionally, the paragraph above that for 160,000 of additional revenue was also spent towards that locker room project to minimize how much money to take out of the capital reserves. So that was a reflection. The 722 was the reflection of how far over the budget we went. And then the actual net was taking that 161 off from the 446. In addition to the 446 that we took out of the capital reserve fund.
Okay, yeah, in my question to you earlier, I almost wrote, was this because of the lobby?
But and it gets more complicated because it's tough to see it.
Yeah.
Because we had money come into the capital reserve fund in the amount of 438. So 446 went out to cover the lobby project and 438 came in from the previous year fund balance.
Mhm.
So those numbers being so close makes it more difficult to understand exactly the ins and outs.
Yeah. So that's clear enough. There was another one that I do believe I asked last year, and I can never seem to remember what this is about, but in the fund balance spreadsheet, there's a discussion about unassigned
Mhm.
expenses with a parentheses that says deficit. And I could find later on in the report that some of those had to do with food service and apparently like the theater, the fall musical was over budget or something.
We allocated some funds that we hadn't previously allocated to. And understanding that the fall musical is a fund like food service outside of the budget.
Mm.
So moving some money outside of needed to be accounted for and showing that.
But there's another $60,000 that's not really itemized, I would say. And is that probably just spread over a bunch of different categories that?
So what I have so what we're looking at is page 16 for all of you with the
Yeah.
audit out. Sorry, that's funny to me. There's two pieces, the other governmental funds of 86,836, which reflects food service of 73,8, ARP, IDA, B, which is, what is that? Which was 7,700 and then an additional fall musical for a little north of $5,000, adding up to that 86,838. Then the other column, which is the general fund change, and that's the net effect of the capital reserve in, capital reserve out, Lincoln School District out for the ed fund of 74,000, giving us a total negative of 83,000.
Yeah, I forgot about
So
that.
that's where, and it jumps off the page, because
Yeah.
why in the world would we
Well,
be
that's
off?
why I-
Right.
That's why I saw that. Okay, what the hell?
So those are the explanations, pretty simple, but you have to kind of walk through them. Any others?
Then my one question when I open this up is, where do I find the confirmation of last year's fund balance? It's always hidden.
There was no fund balance in 23.
Okay.
We liquidated
That's
everything
right, we
on the
didn't carry
lobby
anything over.
so that we could take the least amount out of the capital reserve, so that it didn't have to be voted on next week
Yeah,
for inclusion next July.
that's right, okay.
So we wanted to try and leave the money accessible or gone.
I'm good. Thank you.
Other questions about
How loud was that? I'm sorry.
the owl? even heard it.
Yeah, got it. It's fascinating.
Other questions or discussion about the audit or about this action item? Liz?
Thank you so very much for all the work. It feels really nice to be able to be proud and say that this audit came through and it looks good. I mean, that's huge to be able to, I mean, that's something I think I would love our community to know. And I think when the issues came up between like us and your numbers and trustworthiness and all of that, like, that's a really big thing to be able to say that we have and we're doing well. And another thing I appreciated was the superintendent's report. I know this is off a little bit. The superintendent's report that did a note to our support staff and everything they do. And that's another really great thing that, I mean, I'd love our community to see that, I do look forward to us finding more ways when we're out of budget season to get those notes out to everyone.
I think it's also important to note that the treasurer, who works for you, not for the district, is exceptional in doing her job. You know, she will, without hesitation, come in, close the door and say, I need you to explain these 4 checks before I sign them. And that's reassuring to me as a community member and taxpayer, and I want to make sure that you, as the board members, know that you have someone taking care of the nickels, other than just me, you know, somebody that represents you. So yay to Barb and Danielle.
Okay,
I had a quick question.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was trying to find in here the bonds. Wasn't there a bond floated for Lincoln as well that this district had to manage?
It shows up we danced with them on that because we wanted to get it out, but on June 30th, it was still ours, and it sits in. It's in this financial report and audit, and comes out the very next day, July 1st, because that is moved to Lincoln. As to where that sits in here, give me a minute and I'll point you to a page.
Bonds payable,
Yeah, it's still.
page
I
17.
saw it in there.
Isn't that for Robinson though?
Well, there's 2. There's a Robinson bonds payable going forward, but we also still had, as of the 30th, a legal responsibility for the for the bond at Lincoln.
Yeah, there was an explanatory note at the end
Mhm.
that described that transfer.
We asked for that to be added, yeah.
That page is. 31, 32.
Why do you don't have to hold, we won't hold up everybody for it.
I'll
Just
find it
let
and
me
give it to
know.
you.
Yeah, just shoot me an email, that's fine.
Thank you.
Want to vote,
Yes.
Kristen?
I'm ready. Okay, all those in favor of approving the FY 23 audit report, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Policy and Governance Committee.
So we didn't have a quorum last time, so we just, Trina and I just sort of went through the scope of work and got caught up on our discussions. So really, if anybody wants to dive into what we're up to, we can read the minutes.
Questions or comments for those good folks? Okay,
There's gonna be a lot of policies headed your way. Brace yourselves.
hold on here. Arte. All right, Community Engagement Committee, our minutes are attached. To Liz's point about finding ways to really keep lifting up the good stuff that's happening. The committee is going to be shifting to really focusing on developing a more deliberate community engagement plan and thinking about different stakeholder groups and the best ways to connect with those folks, sharing information and also getting input from people in our community about a variety of issues, not just the budget, but including the budget. But at the beginning of our meeting, we did get a great update. We were joined by Erin Tebow, who's the Mount Abe Assistant Principal, and Anne McKinney, the Bristol Principal, which was awesome to have them join us and share what they're currently doing in, and specifically sharing what's happening in Bristol and a little bit in Robinson around anti-racist work and inclusion, and Erin talking about the screening of Listen Up here at Mount Abe and the deliberate way they're really trying to do some pre-work and post-work with students and staff around the content in the Listen Up musical, which really touches on the different issues that folks from all different kinds of identity groups might experience in Vermont, students in Vermont. So, so that was great to have their participation. And we did talk a little bit about one of the things under ownership linkage that was brought up to the board a year or so ago was around school advisory councils. And so that interest was expressed again, and it was great that that was something that Anne, the principal of Bristol, was saying. Yeah, it's great to have administrators hear about that and share their input into what that could look like. So just a nice exchange there. And that's not it for that group. Okay. So I think that's it for our regular agenda. We do have an executive session, and because it relates to the superintendent contract, we have to, under statute, first determine, in order to go into executive session, that the district would be, we have to determine that premature general public knowledge would clearly place this body or the person involved, in this case, the superintendent, at a substantial disadvantage. So we need a motion for that, and then we need a motion to enter an executive session. So this is under Title I VSA 5, Section 313A1A contracts. So may I have a motion?
Krista, did you want to do the public comment first?
Oh, yes.
Well, I'm looking further down the agenda.
We do have an action. We may be taking action when we come out to authorize the board chair to act on any changes to the contract, to finalize the contract.
And then we also have some more after the public comment.
No, our agenda prep and meeting evaluation. Okay, here's what I think we're gonna do. let's do public comment. Agenda planning and evaluation. And then, we'll go into executive session. And because Patrick will not be joining us, we will close out the Zoom meeting since the body is all here and excuse everybody else other than board members. The minutes will reflect any action that we do take, which would merely be to authorize the chair to finalize the contract. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, so is there any public comment?
I just want to take this chance, since I'm not there in person, to thank Kevin and Krista and Sarah for your service to the board. Sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight to say this to you. You've been on the board since MAUSD was formed. A lot of institutional knowledge is going with you, and it's been a long, hard road. But your leadership and dedication to doing the right thing for the right reasons has been commendable. So thank you very much.
Patrick.
You're welcome. And it's certainly been a privilege to work with you as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
It is yeah, it's like a bittersweet relief to step down.
Yes.
And I hope you got some powder out there on your trip.
Today was the best powder day by far. It was great.
Oh. So nice. Okay, any other public comment? All right, hearing none, then we will, so the next meeting will be the board reorganization meeting, and that's a pretty scripted agenda, and you can look at the work plan to see what else there might be that would be talked about at that meeting. So I don't know that there's much planning that needs to be done beyond that. Yeah.
Just for like when people that are being elected on, so when they arrive, the superintendent is the chair until we vote on a chair.
That's right.
And I found it very helpful last year that we had a little bit of like knowledge about either what, like people that were staying, what might happen. And the committee formation also, I think we formed that in the reorganizational meeting, and now they have a little bit of structure for the most part, and so I think we would anticipate that would be the same thing. You might be joining a committee and there's a chair and a vice chair. Yes,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
And is
So-
there any like expressed interest in people for being in a more leadership role? Is that something we're not allowed to talk about in this session, or just asking?
Yeah, I'm interested. That's why I stepped into the vice chair role, was to assume the board chair role next. Happy to serve that unless somebody else feels they would like to and are more equipped. And then I've dragged someone with me, hopefully. I've investigated with Mike a little bit about stepping into the vice chair role, and I think he's agreed on a limited basis for a 1-year trial run to see if the vice chair role fits him or not. Unless someone else feels they are better equipped and are willing to do that role.
And then there's the clerk position, which has been held by Liz for quite some time, which currently involves assisting with minute taking when the minute taker isn't available. And occasionally you have to sign some documents that are required by the clerk and or the chair. Anything else about the role that you?
Just make sure to be available for minutes, I think is.
Yeah.
main. I'm so glad Vicky's here.
And then for committees, I mean, I think the expectation is that it had been this year that everybody would join a committee. So I think that's important so that everybody can share the work. And with facilities, maybe dissolve, not being a committee next year.
It's of course not offered.
Sorry,
It's
of course not offered,
in the
but there are
capital
other
district.
options that are
Right.
just as exciting. And those committees will also need to have a chair.
Again.
Big part of reorganization might be re-looking at the charges. And I don't think it's a done deal that facilities is not going to be available, right? I mean, that's a
Right.
decision for the board to make.
Yep.
So I think a yearly examination of what it says in our charges for those committees, and whether that, if that's changed, then great, we should modify it and move committee in that direction. That might be a great agenda item for a reorganization meeting.
And the other thing that I was just remembering we talked about, Erin, was whether there are, like, I think last year, because we were forming committees, we invited two folks from VSBA at the beginning of that
Oh,
meeting to talk
yeah.
with us about being a policy governance board and forming committees and what does that mean? And so in that spirit of like board education and orientation, sometimes we'll dedicate a part of that meeting to a particular topic that folks want to be oriented on, and or think about whether there are topics that maybe quarterly people want to have like more formal education on. So that's something else that might happen.
I think that was very well received, having those.
Yeah.
Well, it's a great first presentation for new board members. as well.
Yeah, that too.
Policy governance in general.
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, and it might be, I don't know how easily someone would be available for the organization meeting, but
An orientation.
yeah. Yeah. If VSBA is great at being able to provide trainings, as long as you can get them scheduled with some amount of time, so yeah. Anything else folks are wondering about with that first meeting coming up after town meeting day? And, you know, hopefully you'll be celebrating the passing of Articles 9 and 10.
Yeah, there might be an agenda item, I'm not really.
Let's not.
First, we have to do the other
Stop that.
things.
At this point, yeah, I do have one broad question. I don't know who else is running, if anything, in Bristol. Like, do we know if there's people running for these empty seats? And,
No,
and if not, I imagine either at that meeting or shortly thereafter, we'd be trying to pull in appointees. Is that
One's running for your seat.
We're both open.
Erin's been putting out some feelers.
Yeah,
What's
And-
the write-in number for that?
26.
Okay. I don't live there, but.
You know, people.
Yeah.
26.
Well, then you gotta broadcast the name to write down. It needs to be written a special way.
There was an individual that did a write-in one year and he stood out front and he had a whole thing of little stickies.
You gotta put it in the right, you gotta put it in the board member number, whatever, and board
Right.
member A and board member B.
But if folks are interested and they didn't get the right number, they could also be
Right.
appointed.
So do we get told who those are? I don't think so.
They'd have to express their
They would
interest.
have to,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And
So
it has to be done within
30 days, yeah. Okay, so, we just have our meeting evaluation.
Just so happen to have it up. Level of engagement of all board members, high or low? I said high. Was the agenda followed, yes or no?
Yes.
I said yes, and the only notes I added was amendments to some motions that we presented tonight, and then we shifted the end of this meeting to accommodate everybody here. Does the chair effectively establish the agenda and materials for distribution to the board, yes or no?
Yes, thanks, Krista.
Sure. Is the chair effective in fostering a professional culture regarding fair and open deliberation, full participation of all members, and ensuring the integrity of the board process?
Yeah.
Yes.
Any comments?
We'll miss you.
That's nice.
I'm hearing there's still time for a write-in campaign. That's what I-
All we need is 26.
Oh, that's right.
Already filled her Tuesday nights with some other.
I know.
Oh, goodness.
What went well with the meeting?
Well, we just did 2 meetings and it's,
Yeah.
we're doing so much better.
That time, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just saying the last
Mhm.
year, even though there's been a lot of chaos around things, I'm still impressed with our timing.
Yeah, yeah.
Suggestions for ways to improve future meetings? None?
I have one,
What's that?
actually. So we had a bunch of resignations tonight, and we often do, and we don't normally say much of anything about them, because they're in the consent agenda. And it'd be nice if there was some way the board could show some appreciation for some of these folks,
Yeah.
Yeah.
especially,
Agree, especially
Definitely
Dora.
on this side.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Carla too.
I mean, I'm not less familiar with some of the other folks, but, in general, I think it'd be a great thing if we could find some way to show our appreciation.
I would agree with that.
Noted. Anything else? Okay,
That's it.
that's it.
All right. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to the first motion, which is to determine that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage.
So moved, Aaron.
In a second,
I'll second. Kristen?
okay? All those in favor of said motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and then the second motion is to enter into executive session under Title I, VSA 5, Section 313A, 1A, contracts.
So moved.
Steve
I'll second.
and Aaron. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay,